Marcus Chun stared at the ceiling of his cramped quarters aboard the Resolute Dawn, wondering for the 1000th time how his life had led him here. 30-2-year-old logistics coordinator, stuck on a rust bucket of a cargo ship that smelled like burnt wiring and recycled air that had been recycled one too many times. The ship itself was a joke among the Terran merchant fleet, decommissioned 15 years ago, patched together with spare parts from 6 different manufacturers, and now somehow deemed worthy of a coalition joint species mission that Marcus privately thought was designed to fail from the start. He rolled out of his bunk and pulled on his gray uniform, not the crisp white of actual officers, but the forgettable gray of support staff who kept everything running while the important people made important decisions. The mission briefing had been clear enough. Transport a company of Kryn warriors to the outer reaches, where they would deal with pirate problems the coalition couldn't be bothered to handle officially. Marcus's job was to manage supply chains, fuel consumption, and make sure the warriors didn't accidentally blow holes in the hull while practicing their combat drills. The Kryn terrified him, if he was being honest. Each one stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 massive arms ending in claws that could tear through steel plating. Their skin was the color of gunmetal and just as hard. Their eyes glowed amber in the dim corridors, and they moved with a predatory grace that reminded Marcus of the big cats he'd seen in the old Earth documentaries. They barely acknowledged his existence to them. He was less than a servant, more like furniture that occasionally moved and requisitioned supplies. Their war captain, a scarred veteran named Drakmer, had made it clear during their first meeting that humans were soft creatures whose only value was in running away fast enough to let real warriors do their jobs. Marcus had smiled politely and requisitioned an extra ton of the protein supplements the Kryn required, because that was his job: smile politely and make sure everyone had what they needed. The ship shuddered violently, throwing Marcus against the wall hard enough to leave bruises. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson as the alarm began its ear-splitting wail, not the standard drill pattern, but the real thing, the pattern that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. Marcus's training kicked in automatically. He grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the bridge, navigating corridors that twisted and buckled around him as the ship continued to shake itself apart. Bodies littered the command deck. The Coalition command staffed 3 officers from different species, including War Captain Drakmer lay motionless near the navigation console. Their bodies twisted at angles that Marcus's brain refused to process as he stumbled toward the captain's chair. The ship's SI spoke in its calm, maddeningly neutral voice. Warp core containment failure. Emergency jump protocol initiated without proper navigation. 67% of command-level officers deceased. Transferring command to Senior Logistics Coordinator Marcus Chen, Terran Merchant Fleet, by order of Survival Succession Protocols. Wait, what? Marcus croaked, his throat dry with terror. You are now captain of this vessel. The AI continued. Authorization code transferred. All ship systems now respond to your command. The bridge door burst open and War Master Kelsha entered, her forearms flexing in barely contained rage as her amber eyes locked onto Marcus. She stood even taller than most Kryn, with ritual scars across her shoulders that marked her as a veteran of 30 campaigns. Her voice rumbled like distant thunder when she spoke. Human, step away from the command chair. I can't, Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. The AI has transferred captaincy to me as the senior surviving officer with command training. You? Kelsha's laughter was harsh and humorless. You, who coordinate supply shipments. You, who have never held a weapon in combat. You dare claim authority over Kryn warriors? I don't dare anything, Marcus shot back, surprising himself with the anger in his voice. Your war captain is dead. My commanding officers are dead. The ship is barely holding together, and according to these readouts, we're in uncharted space with no idea how to get back. I didn't ask for this. Kelsha moved closer, her claws extended. And Marcus forced himself not to step back, showing fear to a Kryn was the worst thing you could do. By Kryn law, she said slowly, each word carefully chosen, I cannot commit mutiny without ritual cause, but that same law allows me to challenge an unworthy captain after 3 solar cycles. You have 3 days, human, 3 days to prove you deserve to live. Let alone command. The ship shuddered again and alarms screamed across multiple consoles. Marcus turned to the displays, his logistics training automatically processing the data. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Life support at 60%, engines damaged but functional. And his blood ran cold. 63 Kryn warriors trapped in the lower cargo bay with oxygen running out. Your warriors are dying, Marcus said quietly, pulling up the schematics. Cargo Bay 7 structural collapse has sealed them in, and the environmental controls are failing. Kelsha was at his side instantly, her eyes scanning the data with the speed of a trained tactician. How long? She demanded. 90 minutes before the oxygen runs out completely, Marcus said, his fingers already working across the console. But the main corridor is blocked. We'd need to cut through 3 bulkheads, and we don't have time. Then my warriors will die with honor, Kelsha said, her voice flat and final. No, Marcus said, an idea forming. No. There's another way, look. The waste disposal system runs parallel to that bay. If we can reverse the airflow and reroute emergency oxygen through the recycling pumps, you would save them through a garbage chute? Kelsha's tone was incredulous. I would save them however I can, Marcus replied, already inputting commands. I need your engineers to manually override 3 valves here, and here. Can your warriors follow complex instructions under pressure? For a long moment, Kelsha simply stared at him. Then she activated her comm unit and began barking orders in the Kryn language, a voice carrying the absolute authority of a warrior who expected instant obedience. Marcus coordinated the effort like he coordinated supply chains, breaking down the problem into manageable steps, anticipating bottlenecks, adapting when things went wrong. When the oxygen finally flowed into Cargo Bay 7 and the warriors began reporting in alive, Kelsha turned to look at Marcus with something that might have been the beginning of respect. You have 2 days and 18 hours remaining, Captain, she said, and for the first time, the title didn't sound like an insult. Marcus collapsed into the captain's chair, his hands shaking with delayed reaction. He was captain of a dying ship full of alien warriors who wanted him dead, lost in unknown space with no idea how to get home. It was, he reflected grimly, going to be a very long 3 days. The Resolute Dawn limped through space like a wounded animal, her engines cycling at barely 40% capacity, while Marcus studied star charts that made no sense. They were somewhere in the contested fringe, a region where 3 different powers claimed territory and none of them enforced it, which meant pirates, raiders, and worse things that didn't bother with names or flags. Marcus had slept maybe 6 hours in the past 2 days, running on stimulants and stubborn determination while he tried to figure out how to keep everyone alive long enough to prove he wasn't completely useless. The Kryn had stopped openly challenging him, which Marcus supposed was progress. Instead, they simply ignored his orders unless Kelsha barked them in her own language, making it clear she was choosing to allow him to continue breathing. Captain, the AI announced, I am detecting a distress beacon bearing 173 Mark IV. Coalition frequency. Automated message indicates civilian station under attack. Marcus felt his stomach sink, of course. There was a distress call. Of course, it would complicate everything. Kelsha appeared on the bridge before he could even summon her. Her 4 arms crossed in a posture that Marcus had learned meant she had already decided what needed to happen. We answer, she stated flatly. Honor demands we aid those who cannot defend themselves. Our ship is barely functional, Marcus protested. Pulling up the tactical display. Look at these readings. There are at least 8 raider vessels surrounding that station. Probably Zelker pirates based on the energy signatures. We be flying into a meat grinder. Then we will die gloriously, Kelsha said. And several Kryn warriors behind her growled their approval. Marcus wanted to scream. This was the problem with warrior cultures. They saw every problem as something to throw themselves at with enough force and hope physics worked in their favor. They didn't think about logistics, about risk assessment, about the fact that getting yourself killed helped exactly nobody. Give me 2 hours, Marcus said, his mind already racing through possibilities. 2 hours to analyze the situation and develop a strategy. If I can't come up with something better than a frontal assault, we'll do it your way. Kelsha's eyes narrowed. You delay while innocents die. I think while you prepare to throw lives away. Marcus snapped, then immediately regretted it. The bridge went silent. Every Kryn warrior present tensed, hands moving toward weapons, and Marcus realized he might have just shortened his remaining time from hours to seconds. Then Kelsha did something unexpected. She laughed. A deep rumbling sound that seemed to shake the deck plates. 2 hours, human, she said. But if your plan fails, you will lead the assault personally. Marcus spent those 2 hours doing what he did best. Analyzing data. Running simulations and looking at the problem from every angle that wasn't straight-on violent. The Zelka raiders had positioned themselves in a standard pirate formation, 3 ships blocking the station's main docking ports. 5 more in a loose perimeter to catch anyone trying to run. They were running extortion, not an all-out attack, which meant they wanted the station intact enough to loot. The Resolute Dawn was a cargo hauler, designed to move massive amounts of material across vast distances. She had no weapon systems worth mentioning, armor that was barely better than tinfoil, and engines that were currently held together with hope and emergency patches. What she did have were industrial tools. Marcus pulled up the cargo manifest and started cross-referencing with the ship's manufacturing capabilities, his fingers flying across the console as an idea took shape. Stupid. Dangerous, absolutely insane, but possible. When he presented his plan to Kelsha, her expression went from skeptical to incredulous to something that might have been impressed. You want to weaponize ore refiners? She asked slowly. They're basically magnetic accelerators, Marcus explained. Pulling up schematics, we use them to separate minerals from raw asteroids. If we reverse the polarity and override the safety limiters, they'll launch anything metallic at velocities high enough to punch through light armor. And the cargo containers? We fill them with waste materials, set them on automated trajectories, and program them to broadcast fake energy signatures, Marcus continued, warming to his subject. The raiders see what looks like escape pods or small ships trying to run. They break formation to pursue. We come in from the opposite vector, using garbage as missile decoys. Kelsha finished, and Marcus couldn't tell if she was horrified or amused. It's not glorious, Marcus admitted. But it'll work, probably, maybe. There's at least a 60% chance. The Kryn stared at him. Your species, Kelsha said finally, is deeply strange. They executed the plan with the precision of a military operation and the chaos of a cargo bay clearance sale. Marcus coordinated from the bridge, his logistics training turning the battle into a complex supply chain problem. Timing had to be perfect. Trajectories needed to account for drift and momentum. And the improvised railguns had to charge at exactly the right intervals, or they'd blow the ship's power grid. The Zelka raiders took the bait beautifully. 3 ships broke formation to intercept what they thought were fleeing targets, leaving the station's main approaches vulnerable. The Resolute Dawn came in low and fast, Her industrial equipment spitting cargo containers full of refined ore at velocities that turned them into kinetic weapons. One raider ship simply disintegrated when a container full of iron fragments hit it at a relative velocity of 30 kilometers per second. The others scattered, their formation broken. And Marcus pressed the advantage, not by pursuing like the Kryn wanted, but by positioning the Resolute Dawn between the raiders and the station, daring them to come through her to get to their target. The Zelker weren't warriors. They were thugs and opportunists who ran when the odds turned against them. Within 20 minutes, the surviving raider ships had jumped to warp. Leaving the station damaged but intact, Marcus slumped in the captain's chair, his hands shaking from adrenaline crash. While around him, the Kryn warriors stood in confused silence. They had won decisively, completely, without losing a single crew member or even taking significant damage. But they had done it without honor, without glory, without the visceral satisfaction of blade meeting armor and warrior facing warrior in honest combat. Young Vexmore, a Kryn barely passed his warrior trials, approached Marcus hesitantly. "Captain," he said, his voice uncertain, "among my people, we celebrate victory with the song of fallen enemies, but how can we sing when no enemy fell to our claws? How can we claim glory when we used," he struggled for words, "garbage and mathematics?" Marcus looked at the young warrior, then at Kelsha, then at all the Kryn who had fought beside him. "You're all still alive," he said simply. "Every single one of you will see another day. We'll fight another battle. We'll go home to whatever you hold dear. Is that not worth more than glory? Is survival not the greatest victory?" The Kryn were silent. Kelsha stepped forward, her forearms spread in a gesture Marcus didn't recognize. "You have completed the second trial, human," she said formally. "You preserved our warriors when honor would have demanded we spend their lives. I do not know if this makes you wise or cowardly, but you are still breathing. And so are we." It wasn't exactly high praise, but Marcus would take it. As the Resolute Dawn began docking procedures with the damaged station to render aid, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. One day, and 6 hours remaining until the Kryn could legally challenge him, he might actually survive this. Word traveled fast in the contested fringe faster than light sometimes, carried on encrypted channels and whispered in stations where official law meant nothing. The story spread like fire through dry grass. A human captain commanding Kryn warriors, defeating 8 raiders without firing a shot, using methods that made no sense to anyone who thought like a traditional warrior. Marcus discovered this when his comm unit started receiving messages from people he'd never met. The first was from a Navigator Guild delegation, 3 insectoid beings whose compound eyes reflected light in dizzying patterns. Their bodies modified with cybernetic implants that their home government had declared illegal and heretical. "We seek employment," their spokesperson clicked in heavily accented standard. "Our people cast us out for embracing what they called unnatural. Enhancement, you are known as one who values results over tradition, yes?" Marcus found himself saying yes before he'd fully thought it through. The second group arrived 2 days later, a medical team of Sirene, reptilian beings whose healing techniques involve genetic manipulation that most species considered too dangerous or too unethical to allow. "The Coalition banned our research," their leader explained, her forked tongue tasting the air nervously. "They say we play God, but we only seek to heal those whom standard medicine has abandoned." Again, Marcus agreed to take them aboard. Kelsha confronted him in the cargo bay that had been hastily converted into medical quarters. Her forearms crossed in clear disapproval. "You fill our ship with outcasts and refuse," she growled. "These beings, they are weak, broken, cast aside by their own people for good reason. So were you," Marcus pointed out quietly. The War Master went very still. "The Coalition gave you this mission Because you're expendable, Marcus continued, meeting her amber gaze without flinching. Everyone on this ship is here because someone decided we didn't matter, so maybe instead of judging each other, we could try working together? For a long moment, Kelsia simply stared at him. Then she turned and walked away without another word, which Marcus had learned was sometimes the closest thing to agreement you could get from a Kryn. The Resolute Dawn became something unprecedented, a floating community of misfits and castaways, each one bringing skills and perspectives that meshed in unexpected ways. The Navigator Guild's cybernetic enhancements allowed them to calculate jump coordinates with inhuman precision, their modified brains processing stellar cartography data faster than any standard computer. The Cyrene medical team set up a clinic that could handle injuries from a dozen different species, their controversial techniques saving lives that would have been lost under standard Coalition medical protocols. The engineering crew Marcus recruited a mix of beings from 5 different species who'd all been blacklisted, for one reason or another, kept the ancient ship running through a combination of technical knowledge and creative desperation. And the Kryn slowly, grudgingly began to see that strength came in forms they'd never considered. The crisis came when a Coalition patrol frigate intercepted them near the edge of fringe space. The captain, a pompous Valorian with medals covering his chest, declared them pirates operating an unregistered vessel with an illegal crew composition. "You will surrender immediately," he announced over open channels. "Any resistance will be met with deadly force." Marcus looked at his ragtag crew warriors. Navigators, medics, engineers, all of them watching him to see what he would do. They couldn't fight a Coalition frigate in open combat. The patrol ship had real weapons, real armor, and a trained military crew that knew what they were doing. But humans didn't win fights by being stronger. They won by being adaptable. "All hands, battle stations," Marcus ordered calmly. Then added, "And by battle stations, I mean everyone does something completely unexpected on my mark." The Coalition frigate opened fire with warning shots, plasma bolts that seared past the Resolute Dawn's hull close enough to make the shield scream. Marcus didn't return fire instead. He ordered the Navigator Guild to plot a jump sequence that should have been mathematically impossible, threading through a debris field at FTL speeds, while the Cyrene medical team flooded the external sensors with a biosignature that made it look like the ship was leaking atmosphere and dying. The engineering crew simultaneously vented coolant and waste products, creating a cloud that scattered sensor readings while the Kryn warriors following Marcus's hastily explained plan used their personal weapons to shoot specific pieces of hull plating, making it look like the ship was breaking apart under fire. The Coalition captain hesitated, clearly not expecting his targets to practically explode themselves. That hesitation was all Marcus needed. The Resolute Dawn jumped not away from the fight, but through the debris field in a series of micro-jumps that the Navigator Guild calculated in real time, their cybernetic implants processing gravitational eddies and spatial distortions faster than any standard navigation computer could manage. They emerged behind the Coalition frigate, close enough that Marcus could have counted the hull plates if he'd wanted to. "Now," Marcus said quietly, and the engineering crew activated every system they jury-rigged over the past weeks. The improvised railguns charged, industrial tractor beams locked onto the frigate's engine pods, and the ship's external speakers broadcast a message in 15 different languages simultaneously, a trick the medical team had suggested, using their knowledge of alien neurology to create audio patterns that induced confusion and disorientation. The Coalition captain found himself staring at what appeared to be a cargo hauler that had somehow outmaneuvered his military vessel, positioned itself for a killing shot, and was currently broadcasting sounds that made his crew's antennae twitch uncontrollably. "Stand down," Marcus said simply. "Or find out what happens when a ship full of people with nothing to lose decides to get creative." The frigate powered down its weapons. As the coalition ship limped away, its captain no doubt composing a very embarrassing incident report, the crew of the Resolute Dawn erupted into chaotic celebration. The Navigator Guild clicked and buzzed triumphantly, their cybernetic implants flashing victory patterns. The Siren medical team hissed with satisfaction, already preparing to treat the minor injuries from the frantic maneuvering. The engineers were already arguing about which improvised system had been most effective and which ones needed refinement. And the Kryn Kelsha approached Marcus slowly, her forearms hanging loose at her sides, and what he'd learned was a gesture of respect among her people. "Today I watched you turn cowards into warriors," she said quietly, so only Marcus could hear. "You gave them purpose. Showed them their worth. You made them want to fight not for glory, but for each other." "They're not cowards," Marcus replied. "They never were. They just needed someone to believe in them." "As do we all," Kelsha agreed. That night, during the evening meal in the makeshift common area they'd created from a converted cargo hold, Marcus watched his crew interact. A Kryn warrior was teaching one of the navigators a traditional battle chant while the navigator explained orbital mechanics. The Siren medics were sharing fermented beverages with the engineering crew, discussing the philosophical implications of what constituted natural versus enhanced. Young Dexmore sat with a group of beings from 4 different species, all of them laughing at some joke Marcus couldn't quite hear. This strange, impossible, beautiful mess was what humans did best. They didn't conquer through strength. They united through stubborn belief that everyone mattered, that every perspective had value, that the whole could be so much more than the sum of its parts. Kelsha joined him at his observation post, a massive frame somehow looking less intimidating than it had when they'd first met. "The 3 days have passed," she said. Marcus tensed. He'd been so busy he'd actually forgotten about the deadline. "You could have challenged me hours ago," he said. "I know," Kelsha replied. "I chose not to. Instead, I swear the oath of following. Freely given where you lead. Human, I will follow, not because law compels me, but because I choose to see what else you will teach us." Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. "I'm still just a logistics coordinator," he said. "No," Kelsha said firmly. "You are our captain." And for the first time since this whole insane situation began, Marcus actually believed it. The message arrived on encrypted Kryn military channels. Bypassing every security protocol Marcus had established and appearing directly on the bridge main screen. It bore the seal of the Kryn Home Council, 12 warriors who governed their entire species through a combination of military tradition and ceremonial law. "Captain Marcus Chun," the message read in coldly formal standard. "You are hereby summoned to appear before the Home Council, to answer for crimes against Kryn honor and tradition. War Master Kelsha and all warriors under your command are ordered to return immediately, or face permanent exile as oathbreakers and traitors to their people." Marcus read it 3 times, his blood growing colder with each pass. Kelsha stood beside him, her forearms rigid with tension, her amber eyes reflecting something Marcus had never seen there before: fear. "They will kill you," she said flatly. "The council sees you as a corruption of our ways, a human who has turned warriors from the path of honor. They will demand your execution as an example. Then we run," Marcus said immediately. "We're already outcasts. We'll find somewhere in the fringe where they can't reach us." "No." Kelsha's voice was firm. "My people have laws older than your species' recorded history. If we flee, every Kryn in this crew becomes an oathbreaker. Our families will be shamed, our ancestors dishonored, our very names erased from the warrior songs." Young Dexmore spoke up from the tactical station, his voice uncertain. "There is one way, Captain. The Gauntlet of Vershax." Every Kryn on the bridge went silent. "What's the gauntlet?" Marcus asked. Looking between them, Kelsha's expression was grim when she answered. Ancient Kryn lore states that only those who prove themselves in the gauntlet may command warriors. It is a series of ritual combats designed to showcase a leader's worthiness through martial prowess, tactical supremacy, and warrior's endurance. Combat trials, Marcus said slowly, his stomach sinking. You want me to fight Kryn warriors in hand-to-hand combat? You would die in the first round, Kelsha said bluntly. You are clever, human, and brave in your way, but you cannot match a Kryn warrior in physical combat. The gauntlet has never been completed by any being not of our species. But if I refuse, you all become outcasts? The Kryn warriors around him nodded silently. Marcus thought about the crew he'd assembled, the navigators, the medics, the engineers, all the people who'd found purpose aboard his ship. He thought about Dexmoor's laughter, about Kelsha's grudging respect, about the community they built from cast-offs and misfits. Set course for the Kryn homeworld, he said quietly. The journey took 6 days. Marcus spent most of that time in the ship's archive, reading everything he could find about the Gauntlet of Vershax, and there was surprisingly little information available. Mostly historical accounts of legendary warriors who'd proven themselves worthy. But Marcus had learned long ago that understanding the rules of a system was the first step to finding its weaknesses. The Gauntlet, according to the oldest texts he could find, wasn't originally about combat at all. It was about proving leadership, about demonstrating the qualities that made someone worthy of commanding others. Somewhere over millennia of tradition, leadership had become synonymous with ability to kill efficiently. But the original words, Marcus traced them carefully through 3 different translation programs, spoke of wisdom, of inspiration, of unity. An idea began to form. The Kryn homeworld was exactly as Marcus had imagined. Harsh, beautiful, covered in red rock formations and structures built from stone that had stood for thousands of years. The arena where the gauntlet took place was an ancient amphitheater carved into the side of a mountain, with seating for 50,000 warriors who had come from across Kryn space to witness what many expected would be a human spectacular failure and death. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber wearing traditional gauntlet, armor minimal protection that left most of his vital areas exposed, because apparently proving your worth meant being as vulnerable as possible. Kelsha helped him adjust the straps, her 4 hands working with surprising gentleness. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. We could still run and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Marcus smiled, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Besides, I have a plan. Your plans usually involve garbage and mathematics, Kelsha pointed out. This one involves ancient poetry and semantics, Marcus replied. So, basically the same thing. The first trial was single combat against a Kryn champion. The warrior who entered the arena stood 9 feet tall, covered in ritual scars, carrying a blade that looked like it could cleave Marcus in half without slowing down. The crowd roared approval as the champion advanced. Marcus raised his own blade lighter, smaller, designed for his human proportions, and then did something no one expected. He threw it down. The arena went silent. I invoked the right of words, Marcus shouted, his voice amplified by the arena's ancient acoustics. According to the texts of First Warriors, any combatant may challenge through philosophy before weapons. The champions stopped, confused. The council members, seated in their high places of honor, looked at each other uncertainly. No one had invoked that right in living memory. Possibly in centuries, but the law was the law. Speak then. Human. The head counselor's voice boomed. Though it will only delay your death, the gauntlet, Marcus said, pitching his voice to carry to every corner of the amphitheater, was designed to test leadership, to prove that whoever commands warriors possesses the qualities necessary to lead them to victory and preserve their lives. And you think you possess such qualities? The champion growled. I think, Marcus said carefully, that leadership isn't about being the strongest fighter. It's about seeing strength in others and using it wisely. I've commanded Kryn warriors in battle. We've won every engagement without losing a single life. Is that not the greatest measure of leadership? The crowd murmured, uncertain. You won through trickery. Someone shouted from the stands. I won through tactics, Marcus countered. Through understanding my resources and using them effectively. Through valuing the lives of those who follow me more than my own glory. Is that not what a leader should do? The second trial involved endurance traversing an obstacle course designed to push Kryn physiology to its absolute limits. Marcus studied it carefully, then turned to the council. I cannot complete this course as designed, he admitted. And the crowd rumbled with satisfaction at his admission of weakness. But, Marcus continued, raising his voice, leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about knowing when to ask for help and trusting those who follow you. He gestured. And Dexmore stepped forward from where the Resolute Dawn's crew had been permitted to watch together. They completed the course, Marcus navigating the sections that required careful timing and strategy. Dexmore handling the parts that demanded raw physical power. This is not permitted. A counselor protested. Show me where it is forbidden, Marcus challenged. The gauntlet tests leadership. I am demonstrating that I can lead, that I can inspire trust, that I can accomplish impossible things through cooperation. The third trial was tactical supremacy solving, a complex military scenario. Marcus didn't even try to solve it the traditional way. Instead, he brought in his entire crew navigators, medics, engineers, Kryn warriors, and had each one contribute their unique perspective. The Sci-Fi medical team identified vulnerabilities in enemy positioning based on biological stress patterns. The Navigator Guild calculated approach vectors that traditional tacticians would dismiss as impossible. The engineers suggested using terrain and equipment in ways no pure warrior would consider. The Kryn warriors provided insight into honor-based psychology that could be exploited. The solution Marcus presented incorporated all of it, a battle plan so comprehensive and creative that the council sat in stunned silence. The final trial was the ultimate test, facing 3 War Masters simultaneously in ritual combat. Marcus stood in the center of the arena as 3 legendary warriors entered, each one a veteran of countless battles. Each one capable of killing him in seconds. The crowd leaned forward, finally about to see what they'd come for. A human broken and bleeding. Proof that some lines should never be crossed. Marcus raised his blade, and then he laid it at his feet. I will not fight you, he said clearly. Not because I'm afraid to die, but because I refuse to prove my worth by trying to kill those I would lead. The War Masters hesitated. Confused. You know what I've accomplished, Marcus continued, speaking directly to them. You know that every warrior who serves under me has survived, has grown stronger, has found purpose. I don't ask you to follow me because I'm the strongest. I ask you to join me because together we could change everything. What would you change? One of the War Masters demanded. I would show the galaxy that warriors don't have to choose between honor and survival, Marcus said passionately. That strength and wisdom aren't opposites but partners. That the greatest victories aren't won through blood alone, but through unity, creativity, and the courage to see worth in everyone. 2 of the War Masters raised their weapons, ready to strike down this presumptuous human who dared question millennia of tradition. But Kelsha, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped into the arena. She moved to stand beside Marcus. The Krynholm Council chamber descended into shouting that made the arena chaos look like a polite disagreement. Half the councilors demanded Marcus's immediate execution for corrupting their warriors and defiling sacred traditions. The other half argued that Kelsha's choice proved Marcus had demonstrated the very leadership the gauntlet was meant to test. Marcus stood in the center of it all, still wearing his gauntlet armor, watching his fate being decided by people who seemed to have forgotten he was actually present. Then the alarms began, not the ceremonial horns that marked council decisions, but real emergency sirens that cut through the argument like a blade through flesh. Incoming vessels. A communications officer burst into the chamber, his forearms waving frantically. Multiple ships dropping out of warp on the edge of our defensive perimeter energy signatures matched the forces that attacked the coalition. Mission command vessel. The council chamber went silent. Marcus felt ice water pour through his veins. Those ships, the ones that had destroyed the original command staff and left him accidentally in charge, were here. How many? The head counselor demanded. 43 capital ships and twice that number in support craft, the officer reported, his voice shaking. They're broadcasting a message. Surrender the Kryn homeworld or be annihilated. The chamber erupted again. But this time, in a different kind of chaos. The chaos of warriors preparing for battle. Marcus's tactical mind was already processing the numbers. 43 capital ships against whatever defensive forces the Kryn could muster. He pulled up a holographic display using the chamber's presentation systems and started overlaying data. The Kryn fleet was positioned all wrong, scattered across their territory in traditional defensive formations that assumed attackers would follow conventional warfare patterns. The enemy vessels were using a penetration strategy that would let them reach the homeworld's orbital defenses before the scattered Kryn ships could respond effectively. Your defensive doctrine is outdated, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the arguing. Every Kryn in the chamber turned to stare at him. Excuse me? The head counselor's voice was dangerously quiet. Look at your positioning. Marcus gestured to the holographic display. You've deployed based on honor-based combat assumptions, ship-to-ship duels. Warrior against warrior, but these attackers don't care about honor. They care about winning. And you think you can do better, human? A counselor sneered. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. Give me tactical command of your defensive fleet, he said. Give me 2 hours and authority to coordinate all forces. If I fail, execute me yourself. But if I succeed, you admit that maybe, just maybe, there's more to leadership than tradition. The head counselor looked at the tactical display. At the enemy forces approaching, at the scattered Kryn fleet that was about to be systematically destroyed. This is insanity, he said. No. Kelsha stepped forward. This is necessity. I have fought beside this human. I have watched him turn impossible situations into victories. Let him try. And if he fails, then we all die anyway, Kelsha said bluntly. What do we lose by trying? The council conferred in rapid, growling Kryn that Marcus couldn't follow. Finally, the head counselor turned to him. You have your 2 hours, human, he said. May your ancestors forgive me for this decision. Marcus didn't waste time celebrating. He immediately commandeered the council chamber's communication systems and started issuing orders to every Kryn vessel in range. This is Captain Marcus Chun. Acting Tactical Commander by Council Authority, all vessels implement emergency protocols Alpha through Gamma. The responses ranged from confused acknowledgement to outright hostility. Marcus didn't care. He kept talking, kept coordinating, kept pulling together a defense that made sense to his logistics-trained mind. He repositioned the Kryn fleet, not for honor-based combat, but for maximum tactical efficiency. Ships that had been spread out across 3 systems began clustering into coordinated strike groups. Civilian vessels were evacuated not just from the homeworld, but repositioned to create false sensor signatures that made it look like the Kryn had reinforcements arriving. The orbital defense platforms, ancient weapons that the Kryn had maintained more from tradition than expectation of use, were brought online and networked into a unified targeting grid. And Marcus brought in resources the Kryn had never considered. The Navigator Guild calculating precision, jump coordinates, The siren medical teams preparing triage centers. The engineers from a dozen species working together to jury-rig defensive systems that shouldn't have been possible. "You're using civilians," a counselor protested. "Watching the displays, I'm using everyone," Marcus corrected. "Because that's what humans do. We don't separate warriors from non-warriors. We recognize that everyone has something to contribute." The enemy fleet arrived in Kryn, space, expecting to find scattered defenders they could overwhelm through superior numbers and tactics. Instead, they found a coordinated defensive network that responded like a single organism. When they tried to concentrate force to punch through the defenses, Marcus's repositioned ships hit them from unexpected angles. When they attempted to use their numerical advantage, the false sensor signatures made them overextend, chasing phantom targets. When they finally reached orbital range, the defense platforms networked and coordinated in ways the Kryn had never attempted, created overlapping fields of fire that turned space into a killing zone. And through it all, Marcus coordinated. He moved ships like he moved cargo containers, efficiently, precisely, always thinking 3 steps ahead. He positioned his diverse crew skills where they would have maximum impact: navigators calculating impossible escape routes for damaged vessels, medics coordinating evacuation protocols, engineers finding creative solutions to damaged systems. The Kryn warriors fought with the ferocity their species was known for. But this time, the ferocity was directed and focused by strategy that maximized its impact. The battle lasted 6 hours when it ended. The enemy fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind destroyed vessels and the shattered remnants of what should have been overwhelming force. The Kryn homeworld stood intact. Marcus collapsed into the council chamber's command chair, his body shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline crash around him. The chamber was silent, except for the soft chiming of status updates confirming the enemy retreat. The head counselor approached slowly, his forearms hanging in the gesture of respect Marcus had learned to recognize. "You saved our world, human," he said quietly. "Not through superior strength or warrior prowess, but through," he struggled for words, "through seeing what we could not, through using what you already had." Marcus corrected gently. "Your warriors are incredibly brave. Your ships are powerful. Your defenses are formidable. You just needed someone to coordinate it all, to see it as a whole rather than individual pieces. We offer you the title of War Sage," another counselor announced, "a rank above even our highest generals. Granted to those who change the very nature of warfare." Marcus shook his head. "I'm just a captain," he said. "I coordinate resources and try to keep everyone alive. That's what I'm good at." "Then be our captain," the head counselor said. "Not by chance this time, but by choice. Command our defenses, teach us your ways. Show us how to be more than we have been." Marcus looked around the chamber at the Kryn counselors who had been ready to execute him hours earlier. Then he looked at Kelsha, at Dexmore, at his crew from the Resolute Dawn who had fought beside him. "I'll accept on one condition," he said. "This can't be about humans teaching Kryn. It has to be about everyone learning from everyone: navigators, medics, engineers, warriors, all species, all perspectives. Working together, you would build an alliance," the head counselor said slowly. "I would build a community," Marcus corrected. "One where strength is measured not by individual power, but by what we accomplish together." The counselors looked at each other. This was radical, unprecedented, possibly heretical. But they had just watched it save their world. "The Kryn Council agrees to your terms," the head counselor announced formally. "You will serve as War Sage and Fleet Commander. Teach us your human ways of coordination and cooperation." Later that night, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the Kryn capital city, watching the 3 moons rise over red rock formations that had stood since before humans invented writing. Kelsha joined him. carrying 2 containers of fermented beverage that Kryn warriors traditionally shared after victorious battles. "You changed everything today," she said, handing him one. "I just did what made sense," Marcus replied. "That is what makes it revolutionary," Kelsha said. "You saw what was needed and you did it, without caring about tradition or expectations or what everyone thought should be impossible. Is that a human thing?" Marcus asked, sipping the beverage and trying not to grimace at the bitter taste. "I think it is," Kelsha said thoughtfully. "Your species looks at the universe and sees not what is, but what could be. You see potential everywhere. In everyone. It is infuriating and inspiring in equal measure. So what happens now?" "Now you build your community," Kelsha said. "The Resolute Dawn will become the flagship of a new fleet crewed by those who were cast aside but found purpose. Commanded by a human who became a captain by chance and stayed one by choice.